So basically this is obviously leading on from the analysis stage. So once we know what our user wants, the requirements of the system, then basically we can get started on designing it. So now that the project manager and client have agreed on the requirements, it's time to define how the project is going to be carried out. The design phase is basically about planning the project in detail so that the system will meet user requirements. The first thing we're going to go through is data flow diagrams. Now, this is just describes and gives a diagram of how the system works. We don't really care too much about how the data is processed. We're just worried about how we're going to navigate around the system. So what I've got here is an example of a really basic data flow diagram. So we call this a 0 DFD, zero data flow diagram. And basically it doesn't focus on any one specific area, but what it does focus on is just a general overview, and it makes it as simple as possible. So this could be a company, let's call it Reebok Services with Salt. Now what they've got is they've got customers who basically give them cash and then they give out their goods and services. What we've also got is Reebok Services with Salt giving out their cash to suppliers and they're giving their goods and services back. They've also got employees, so they give cash to their employees, employees give them back their labour, and then they've got investors and creditors, so they're going to be backwards and forwards between paying off shares to their their investors and paying off loans and that kind of thing. Now that's a really basic overview. That's all it's supposed to be. We don't care about how this cash is received, how we give out goods or services. What we care about is just a general overview of where the data is going and where it's coming back. Now as you can see, this is much more in detail. Now this is for a different, I could use the same one I suppose, but this is the next level up if you like. And what this does is it focuses on a specific area. So this one focuses on cash disbursement, so how we give out cash. And it goes into a lot more detail. And as you can see, this is probably going to be focused on using a database, because it's got item IDs, descriptions, and it's got how they're all linked up. So this outlines how all of our data is linked up and basically how they interact with one another, and it goes into a bit more detail. So what we've got here is the purchase. To our left we've got goods and services. We've gone into more detail because we've said what goods and how it interacts with the inventory, and we've also got who's purchasing it. We called it purchasing agent. If we relate it to the one before, then we mean our customer. Then we've got how we interact with our supplier. So where are we getting our goods from? So we need to purchase them. That's going to have an outlay of cash, so how much are we spending on it? Then at the bottom we've got our accounts. So basically what this has done is, this one's very generalised, this one goes into a lot more detail. Can you see my screen? Is everyone good at the moment?
Yeah.
Cool. Cool, sweet, thanks. Okay, so that's a really quick run through on how a data flow diagram works. It basically gives an outline of how the data goes through our system. Now, there has never been a question that's come up about data flow diagrams, ever. But it would be really easy for us to have a multiple choice one or a finish the sentence one. So it's kind of worth us just knowing about it as well. So this is probably a good place for me to interject, because I did forget to mention that a data flow diagram does care about different processes. It has different elements to it that basically mean different things, and one of those is external entity, and that means that it has, or in your program or your data interacts with something that is external. So one of the examples that I used earlier was our customers, and that's an external entity, and we have to show that our data interacts with it in a specific way. So we said that our customers pay and we give them supplies, and vice versa with our suppliers. And this is us showing that we have a data relationship, or we have a relationship with an external entity, and they have different symbols for these, which is part of the questions that you guys are going to be doing in a second. So next up, systems flowchart. you've never done Key Stage 3 with me or Key Stage 4, but we would have gone through this together. But basically, a systems flowchart uses different symbols to show the logic of the system. So this, then this, then this, then this. It goes through it step by step, and we can apply decisions to each part. So this doesn't have any decisions. It doesn't say, if this happens, do this. It just says, this is what's occurring. This one allows us to go, if the customer has enough money, take payment, and so on and so forth. So it's the logic of our system, how it goes through it. Now, systems flowcharts are really, really important for, it really cares about the symbols that we use. So what we've got here are the different symbols. A flow diagram or a system flowchart always starts with a start button. Now the shape of these is really, really important. So we've got a start up here. That means it's the start or the end of our flowchart. We've then got what we call a process element. So basically a rectangle, and that means that something's happening. It might be a calculation, we might be assigning a variable or something like that. It might be doing, count equals count plus 1 or something like that. What we've then got is an input or output box. So we might be inputting how much money the customer's paying, we might be outputting how much they owe. Over here we've got a decision box. This is honestly just an if statement. So if this, then this. So if customer paid enough, yes, say thank you. No, ask for more money. So it's really, really basic, and it just cares about the logic. It doesn't care about how we're requiring that data, how the user's inputting the data, or anything like that. It just assumes that that's taken care of somewhere. We just care about the order of our program. Okay, so an algorithm is a series of steps to solve a problem or carry out a task. Really, really simple. So what we've got here is we've got a start, so we always start with the start. Ask new user to input their chosen ID. We then receive their ID. We're checking to see whether this ID is already in use. If it is, we display choose another ID, and we go back to the user putting in their chosen ID. So you should be able to spot that there's something wrong with this, because this display choose another ID should actually go back up to the top here, because basically this is going to go round and round forever, and we're not going to have the right one. So what this should do is, I can't change it, brilliant. Basically this arrow here should go to here. Now what we've got is a complete loop that goes round and round to the right part, so this bit would be removed. So if it's not in use, then we store the ID, and that is the end of our program. So it's supposed to be really, really simple. It doesn't care about how we receive the ID, it just cares about how it flows, how it goes round and round. Okay, now the next one is an offline form. So we're talking about, basically, if we went out into public, how would we get our information? So imagine if you walk down the street and there's someone trying to collect money for charity. How do they collect this money? They haven't got an iPad, they haven't got anything with them. So we're talking about data collection forms, and these are offline forms. So it should follow some really, really simple main principles. It shouldn't be colour, so that we can print it out in black and white. Instructions on it should be really, really clear. This one you might remember from your question that came up in the mock. Field names should be relevant, indicate which fields are mandatory, so do we need them, why do we need them, that kind of thing. It should have consistent formatting the whole way through, and there shouldn't be too much information on one page. So we've done forms in JavaScript, and in your forms in JavaScript you had to say what would make a good form. And you said something like, it would have clear indication of what's expected, the field name should be clear, which should be easy to understand, it should be easy to read, there should be good white spacing, there should be space between it. The formatting, it should have the same consistent formatting the whole way through, use the same font, that kind of thing. So that's really, really similar. We can basically copy and paste that answer to a data collection form. So what I've done here is I've given you an example of a bad one. So the title, so the formatting's not very good. Also, the one that makes me laugh, if small cell lung cancer is it extensive or limited? So there's no option to say that they don't have lung cancer. So they either have it very, very badly or a little bit. Imagine if a doctor just came out and said, you had extensive lung cancer. So this is obviously not enough information. We need more information from whoever's inputting data here. Basically, it's kind of hard to follow. Places where we should be using like open short text answers, we've got checkboxes and that kind of thing, which is not great. Also at the bottom, the save and close, it'd be quite easy to delete everything. And also, what's the difference between delete and cancel? Basically, it's unclear. We need to give them hints, we need to give them information about what the data is being used for or what we expect from the user. So here we've got what I think is not a great one, but a much better one. So it gives clear instructions, complete the top section. We've got tick one box, it gives instructions about how to fill it in. We've got space for the first name and the surname, not a lot of space, but you know, it's clear what is supposed to go in there. And we've got examples of the data that we're expecting at the bottom. We've got clear instructions about where we're supposed to enter data and where we're not. So basically, it should be quite simple. It should be quite easy to follow. We should be able to print it, and it shouldn't be in colour because we should be able to take it away from the computer. So all of these different things help us design how our program is going to work or how our product is going to work. There are a lot more parts of the design process which we're going to come to in the next lesson. That's why this one's part one. So obviously if you're designing something, you also need to plan. How long is this going to take to do and that kind of thing. If you think back to last chapter, there's obviously stuff that's going to help us to plan, such as Gantt charts and that kind of thing, critical path analysis. All of that is going to help us to plan what we need to do at each stage. It's also really important we think about the software we're going to be using to create our product. If we're using Access, it's going to be very similar to this. If we're creating a 3D printed thing, obviously that's going to be really, really different. We want it to be, you know, as intuitive as possible, but basically you need to think about the requirements that your product's going to have and what software you're going to use for that. So, simply put, guys, with the terrible internet connection, and I got in about 25 minutes ago from trying to improve my internet connection, it didn't work. I basically quickly typed this up for you, and I'm just going to quickly take you through it. So, if you go to Google Classroom, I'm hoping it's uploaded by now. Hey guys, where is it? Oh, it hasn't. Okay. So on Google Classroom, which should be uploading now, I've put this on there. I just want to take you through how to do it. So most of this you can just answer and copy and paste. But for the part where you have to draw it, if you just double click on that one, I've done the first one for you. Loading, loading. You can actually click on here and add the shapes in. And most of the ones that you need are on there. We're not going to go into an extensive amount of detail, and it has to be kind of simple. But towards the end of the lesson, I will put up the answers for this as well. But you just need to double click and then press save and close. There's a couple of questions here, and that kind of thing. So for the one where you have to create a simple data collection form, you can literally just put, and try and make it as simple as possible, and then maybe on the other side of the page you could give instructions. Oops. Alright, so just to give a very basic instruction about what you're expecting from the data, and it might start to look something like this. If you want to be a bit more fancy, you can go to Insert, Drawing, and you can add in text boxes. Mine that's so bad that this isn't even loading. So you could have something like, and then you could actually make this like a bordered text box.